Hello everybody and welcome to this very special segment of TVN. I'm Carol K. Ross and I'm here with Treasure Brooks, who is an alumni of the school, a multidisciplinary artist, and activist, feminist, co-founder of a feminist media company. And we are going to be talking today a little bit about your career and some advice that you could have for some potential master's filmmakers.
Awesome.
So my first question for you is, Women's History Month began this month on March 1st, and among a lot of other pursuits, you have dedicated a lot of time and effort in working on feminist causes, including co-founding your feminist media company, The Meteor. And I wanted to know a little bit about what inspired you to start this company.
Well, I had been organizing and doing activist work since my time at Masters. I didn't know it at the time that that's what I was doing because I was working within the infrastructure of the school in student leadership positions, but that's definitely where I began to hone my voice as an activist. And later, I ventured into the legal space and toyed in private firms, interning, and then later the public defender's office in Baltimore. And gradually I just felt as though there needed to be an earlier point of intervention in terms of how we could stop seeing oppressive systems cannibalize communities. And through that, I found media was really an opportune space, especially with social media just evolving to the place that it was at the time. And so I went to social media with my activism before it was really the thing to do, and through that endeavor, just the space I carved out there, I got connected to my current co-founders who had already been in the space of journalism, and they'd been doing work with women, except it wasn't through any sort of social impact lens. They had been working primarily within beauty and entertainment, mostly because at the time that they had come into journalism, which were decades before myself, those were the only roles that they were entrusted with. It was incredibly hard to get staffed on hard-hitting news, and so they had to go through beauty columns. They had to work within the women-focused sort of content. And through that, though, they were geniuses and they were brilliant, and they understood women to be far more nuanced and complex than the publications were really giving voice to. And so Cindy Levy, who is in charge of the Meteor and really created the team that now advises on it alongside me, she created Glamour Women of the Year at the time that she was Glamour editor-in-chief. She just really sort of revolutionized the space where women were already gathering, but not in the lens of movement spaces, or not with an activist agenda. And so she just sort of co-opted what was already there and where people already were, and that's how the Meteor was born.
And you have recently graduated from Harvard University in 2022 with a degree in art, film, and visual studies. And I'd love to know how you think that you can use the arts to be a power for good for activism.
A lot of what I learned at Harvard was also operating within the graduate school's department, which is called Critical Media Studies. So the undergraduate school focused on art, film, and visual studies was very production and theory oriented. So literally learning like, how do we make different types of art, and I guess where do they fall in the canon of different art making practices. And then the graduate school studies, where I was allowed to take courses in as well, and my mentor actually ran that program, we're really focused on how is media constructed? How do we talk about media? How do we change the media landscape? And so the work that I was doing as a student in the undergraduate college was always employing those tactics I was learning in the critical media courses of intervening on dominant narrative. And I think that that is really largely the function of art, because journalism, they're the mythology of objectivity, and there's, it can be a little bit more rigid, it can be a boys club very seriously, and there are all the means of dissemination of just getting our ideas and our views out are quite difficult in that realm sometimes. But the art space it's a flexible one, and it's an imaginative one that I just found a lot of freedom in, also with my background being in art making. So I think that the real opportunity with art making and activism is to intervene upon things that would otherwise be deemed unquestionable.
And I would love to know, we have a lot of kids at Masters who are very passionate about film and media, and I would love to know what advice you would give to Masters students, especially young women and women of color who are looking to make an impact in the film and media industry, especially through activism. How can they start participating participating in that in a meaningful way?
I would say collaborate with one another. There's definitely a hunger to be seen and be elevated into new spaces by the powers that be, but there really is so much momentum just happening on the ground with people around you, especially because oftentimes our visions are shaped by the same influences since we're part of the same communities. So something that I was sort of late to the game that I wish I'd done a lot sooner and continue to embrace now because I still am very young is just collaborating and seeing my peers as potential collaborators. Oh, that sounds like an interesting idea, or how can I recruit you into this idea that I don't feel like I'm currently empowered enough to man myself? So definitely I'd say just start conspiring, start to be co-conspirators.
Right. And my last question for you is, you've mentioned a lot today in your morning meeting speech that a big turning point in your life is when you discovered your own power, and that you can use your power for good. And I'd love to know, how could one find their own power and use it in a way that can help other people, or use it to find what they're passionate about?
I think it starts with correcting the idea that you are flawed. I think that the first idea that inhibits us from accessing our power is that something's wrong with us. And it's a secret we all keep, that there's something wrong with me that no one else knows, and it's not the thing that's wrong with anybody else, and how do I conceal that? And in the process of trying to conceal that unnameable bad thing about ourselves, so much else falls out and gets obscured. And so I think just relinquishing the idea that we come flawed in any capacity and allowing for us to stretch into our nature is part of being able to witness our own beauty on accident, and then eventually being able to employ that beauty on purpose.
Thank you so much for spending a little bit of time today with Tower Broadcast News. I've been Carol K. Ross.